Homage to the fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni. Homage to the wisdom warrior Manjushri. Homage to all the lineage masters. The supreme subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta. Now we will continue with the Platform Sutra. We are currently on chapter 9. Some of the later sections are quite straightforward, so there may not be a need for extensive commentary. We can simply read through them. This chapter is titled Imperial Summons. It primarily tells the story of how Emperor Zhongzong of the Tang dynasty invited the Sixth Patriarch to serve as the imperial preceptor, but the master respectfully declined and did not go. This is the story. When we study the Platform Sutra, some narratives may seem like very ordinary stories on the surface. In reality, however, they reveal several distinct features. First, the Zen tradition contains pith instructions that point directly to the nature of the mind, much like tantric teachings, and these are explained profoundly well. Second, it details very specific experiences involved in following a spiritual teacher. Take Shen Hui from the earlier chapters, for example. He began following the master at a very young age and continued to propagate the Dharma well into his senior years. We also see how the master taught him when he was present. This mirrors situations in many Buddhist communities today. While the master is still alive, a particular disciple might not be very famous or have vast enlightened activities. Yet in the end, they are the ones who truly uphold the master's teachings. Such cases certainly exist. Therefore, reflecting on Shen Hui's story, I feel that when a master is alive, there are inevitably differences among the disciples. There might be a sense of competition, comparison, and perhaps some interpersonal conflicts. Even if a master recognizes a particular disciple as exceptionally outstanding, unless there is a specific intention, they might not find it appropriate to state this openly or praise them in front of others. Public praise could sometimes subject that person to various criticisms and obstacles. This is also a reality. Thus, to protect them from such obstacles, a master might withhold outward praise. Instead, they grant profound blessings or a direct mind-to-mind transmission. Eventually, that disciple's ability to propagate the Dharma may become remarkably strong. In short, after our last session, I spent some time reflecting. After a master passes into parinirvana, passing down and continuously propagating the essential Dharma they taught is of utmost importance for every disciple. It is a responsibility that requires earnest aspirations. This holds true whether the master is still present or has already passed. After all, every great master in this world, regardless of their status, will eventually enter parinirvana. Generally speaking, many of those who receive the teachings will remain in this world longer. When that time comes, this vital responsibility falls upon your shoulders. It is then that you must do everything possible to transmit the teachings you received during your time with the master. I believe many people think about this, myself included. For instance, as for me, I often reflect that after I leave this world, if they possess noble character, uphold pure discipline, and have a strong aspiration to serve, the future is never entirely certain. We see many dedicated monks, nuns, and lay practitioners around us. If they choose to propagate the Dharma in their communities and in society today, they undoubtedly have the capability to do so. Whether they have the specific karmic merit from past lives to succeed on a grand scale is hard to say. I often ponder this. Although we are here now, there is only so much we can do for everyone. For instance, we have many Khenpos and Khenmos. Last year, after much deliberation, I decided to issue graduation certificates to acknowledge their efforts. Beyond that, there may not be much else we can formally provide. However, if there ever comes a time when Buddhism faces a severe decline and the Dharma needs to be shared far and wide, I believe many will look around and realize that no one else is doing it, and that the precious teachings they received in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition desperately need to be passed on. When that moment arrives, I trust the right causes and conditions will naturally align. Therefore, the stories we discussed previously offer something perhaps even more crucial than profound philosophical theories. They impart the vital principles of propagating the Dharma and sustaining the wisdom lineage of the Buddha. Everyone should keep this in mind. Now, let us continue with today's text. On the first day of the first lunar month of the first year of the Shenlong era, Empress Zetian and Emperor Zhongzong issued the following edict. We have invited masters Hui'an and Shenxiu to receive offerings in the palace. During our leisure from the myriad affairs of state, we consistently study the one vehicle. The first year of the Shenlong era refers to the year 705 AD during the Tang dynasty, under the reign of Emperor Zhongzong. Yuanyuan means the first year. The Shanyuan festival corresponds to the 15th day of the first lunar month. The Zhonyuan festival, or Ulambana, falls on the 15th day of the 7th lunar month. This is based on the traditional calendar system of the Han region. At that time, Empress Zetian was acting as the Empress Dowager, though she later ascended to formally rule after the passing of Emperor Gaozong. In this context, the invitation was issued jointly by two figures, Empress Zetian and Emperor Zhongzong. Thus, the text notes they issued an edict, which was a formal imperial decree. The edict states, "We have invited Masters Hui'an and Shenxiu to receive offerings in the palace." Here, Jian is the royal pronoun reserved exclusively for the emperor. They invited Master Hui'an and Master Shenxiu to the imperial palace to make offerings to them. During the Tang dynasty, many of the emperors were truly remarkable in their profound respect and devotion to Buddhism. We have already discussed Master Shenxiu in previous sessions. As for Master Hui'an, he too served as an imperial preceptor during the Tang dynasty and was a highly realized teacher. It is recorded that he lived to be 128 years old. There is a fascinating story involving Empress Zetian. She once asked Master Hui'an, "Great Master, what is your age?" He replied, "I do not know. I am not entirely sure." The Empress found this quite extraordinary. How could someone not know their own age? She thought it seemed impossible. The Master then clarified, "Are you inquiring about the age of my body or the age of my mind? If you mean my body, it is illusory and constantly in flux. It cannot be confined by a specific age, as bodies within cyclic existence undergo an endless cycle of birth and death. And if you are asking about my mind, the mind is like a continuously flowing river. It is also impossible to assign an age to it, having journeyed through the 6 realms of samsara countless times." Hearing this, Empress Zetian recognized the profound depth and truth in his words. Filled with reverence, she offered him her deepest respect, prostrations, and offerings. This is a well-known historical account. As mentioned, Masters Hui'an and Shenxiu were invited to the palace to receive offerings on numerous occasions. Despite being occupied with a multitude of state affairs, whenever the emperor had a moment of leisure, he would consult these masters to explore and seek guidance on the ultimate one vehicle and the teachings of sudden enlightenment. The two masters declined the honor, saying, "In the south, there is Master Huineng, who secretly received the robe and dharma of Master Hongren, carrying on the mind seal of the Buddha. You should invite him and ask him." The edict notes that while receiving offerings and answering inquiries about the Dharma, both masters humbly deferred when consulted about the Dharma. They essentially said, "Although we are honored to receive the emperor's respect and offerings here, ideally you should invite the Sixth Patriarch, Master Huineng, from the south." They suggested that the emperor seek his guidance on Buddhist matters. If he could be invited, one should direct profound questions to him in person. Because he had actually received the secret transmission of the 5th Patriarch Hongren's robe and bowl, along with the true Dharma lineage. He held the genuine mind seal of the Buddha, the authentic transmission of the awakened mind. He possessed the true essence of the teachings. You should invite him and ask him. Empress Zetian was likely part of this conversation as well. The masters were advising the emperor, the Empress Dowager, and the royal court that they should direct their profound questions to the 6th Patriarch. This passage beautifully illustrates the profound humility of these two masters. They actively recommended another realized practitioner. This stands in stark contrast to how things might unfold today. Nowadays, if someone received such immense royal reverence, instead of praising others, they might be tempted to say, "Oh, Huineng is not qualified. He doesn't hold the true transmission from the 5th Patriarch. We are the sole authentic lineage holders. Keep in mind, both of these masters were direct disciples of the 5th Patriarch. They were highly accomplished. And at that time, regardless of theoretical knowledge or meditative realization, their prestige and renown were tremendous. Ordinary worldly people in their position might have claimed the highest authority for themselves, yet they did no such thing. With deep humility, they recommended a truly realized master to the emperor. Thus, the edict mentions that the emperor acted upon the recommendation of these two masters. We are now dispatching the palace attendant Xue Jian to deliver this edict and invite you. We hope that out of your compassion you will quickly travel to the capital. Consequently, the court dispatched a palace attendant, an official or eunuch who handled confidential affairs and served the emperor directly. This attendant's name was Xue Jian. He was sent with great urgency, perhaps reflecting the emperor's eagerness to invite the Sixth Patriarch. The edict implored the master to show compassion and swiftly travel to the capital. The capital referred to Chang'an in Shanxi, modern-day Xi'an. That's right. During the Tang dynasty, it was Chang'an. When the Sixth Patriarch received this imperial edict, the master submitted a petition declining the invitation on the grounds of illness, expressing his wish to spend the rest of his life in the forest. The text recounts that when the imperial messenger arrived and presented the edict, when the envoy arrived at his location, Master Huineng respectfully declined the invitation. Citing illness as his reason, he expressed a sincere desire to spend the remainder of his days in the tranquility of the forest, far removed from the capital. He was unwilling to go there. This response tells us a great deal. If an ordinary person were to receive such an invitation from Emperor Zhongzong, they would likely be overwhelmed with excitement. Whether young or old, they might boast to everyone, "I just received a summons from the emperor. I must go at once." If they were in the middle of teaching a class, they might tell their students, "Wait here, I have to leave immediately. Look, the royal envoy has arrived." Yet the great master chose not to go. From another perspective, perhaps the karmic conditions for him to travel to the capital were not entirely favorable or meaningful. While being invited by the monarch seems highly prestigious on the surface, from a spiritual standpoint, the actual benefit of such a trip might have been quite limited. Furthermore, an enlightened master who has completely transcended the 8 worldly concerns simply does not value such worldly prestige. True practitioners prefer to remain in secluded, peaceful environments for their practice. This principle is well supported throughout Buddhist scriptures. The Sutra of the 4 Dharmas of the Mahayana describes 4 things that bring joy to a bodhisattva. That is to say, there are 4 things a bodhisattva finds joy in. First, a bodhisattva rejoices in dwelling in secluded places. Second, a bodhisattva is content living alone, out in the open. They do not require luxurious houses. Authentic practitioners place very little importance on their living conditions. Third, a bodhisattva finds immense joy in seeking the Dharma and cultivating wholesome qualities. They rejoice in seeking the Dharma. Their passion for wholesome qualities remains strong, regardless of the environment or the circumstances. Fourth, a bodhisattva rejoices in liberating sentient beings. These 4 qualities reflect the true joy of a bodhisattva. It is clear that the Sixth Patriarch embodied this spirit by choosing the tranquility of the forest. In general, true sages and great masters find genuine fulfillment in 2 main activities: practicing diligently in absolute solitude, or entering bustling cities to actively guide and liberate sentient beings. I am reminded of a time when His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche composed an epic biographical account of King Gezar of Ling. Based on his pure visions, His Holiness asked us to express our spiritual experiences in song. During that gathering, he asked everyone to sing of their feelings at the time. I composed a lyric that went something like this: "At times I am like a hermit in the forest, silently observing my own mind. At other times I am like a wandering guest from the south, traveling freely through unfamiliar lands." When I offered these words, our master was visibly pleased. Sometimes like a hermit in the forest, silently observing one's own mind, and at other times in the Tibetan areas, a guest from the south is a traditional metaphor for someone who travels constantly, roaming freely to share the teachings, wandering from place to place. Sakya Pandita Kunga Gyaltsen expressed a similar sentiment in his treasury of elegant sayings. The wise either expound the Dharma for others or practice alone in seclusion like a precious jewel. They are either worn as a crown ornament or remain hidden deep within an island in the sea. This is a profoundly meaningful analogy. Just as precious gems or corals either remain undisturbed in their oceanic origins, like coral in the sea, remaining at their place of origin, or they become a crown ornament adorning people's heads. By the same principle, the truly wise either expound the Dharma and teach others, or they remain alone, diligently engaged in solitary practice. Many of us would do well to emulate these great masters of the past. It is best if we make these 2 endeavors the primary focus of our lives. You can choose to remain in a peaceful place, cultivate genuine renunciation, and devote yourself wholeheartedly to your practice. Do not allow your days to be consumed by endless worldly afflictions and emotional pain, as that is a meaningless way to live. Alternatively, you can step into various environments to dispel the fog of ignorance for suffering beings. Share the truth with them, even if it is just explaining the basic principles of the Dharma. A life dedicated to these pursuits is a life of true meaning. This deeply reflects the attitude held by the Sixth Patriarch. Now, because he refused to go, the royal attendant was remarkably respectful. He did not behave like some modern officials might, demanding, "This is an order from the highest authority, you must come with me, or else I will find a way to force you." There was no such coercion. He simply accepted the master's decision with grace. Nakanya, Xue Jian said. The Chan masters in the capital all say, if you wish to awaken to the way, you must practice sitting meditation and cultivate samadhi. If liberation is not attained through jhana and samadhi, it has never been achieved. I wonder what teaching your reverence expounds. He said recently back in the capital, many esteemed Zen masters have been discussing spiritual practice. This is what they have been saying. If one truly wishes to awaken to the way and attain genuine realization, one must engage in sitting meditation and cultivate samadhi, the meditative concentration. Without the practice of dhyana and samadhi, liberation is entirely impossible. They argue that throughout history, liberation has only been achieved through the disciplined practice of meditation. Without formal meditation, awakening is out of reach. This is what they are teaching. I wonder, Great Master, what is your view on this? Do you also maintain that all practitioners must perform sitting meditation? Do you agree that without formal meditation, no matter how strictly one upholds the precepts, how eloquently one expounds the sutras, or how deeply one cultivates compassion for all beings, those who have not practiced sitting meditation ultimately cannot attain liberation? Is this your perspective as well? This was the essence of Xue Jian's inquiry. Then the master provided his response. Whenever the Sixth Patriarch answered questions, he often addressed inquiries rooted in relative truth, from the perspective of the ultimate truth. As a result, those asking the questions were occasionally left feeling somewhat bewildered. The master said, "The way is awakened to from the mind. How could it depend on sitting?" A sutra says, if one says that the Tathagata sits or lies down, they are walking a wrong path. Why? The Tathagata comes from nowhere and goes nowhere. That which is without birth and without cessation is the Tathagata's pure dhyana. The emptiness and stillness of all phenomena is the Tathagata's pure sitting. Ultimately, there is nothing to attain, let alone a posture of sitting. Here is how the Sixth Patriarch replied. The spiritual path, the true way, is awakened directly within the mind itself. It is a realization of the mind, independent of maintaining a specific physical posture, because what was just asked about was sitting meditation, the claim that without sitting meditation, liberation is impossible and one cannot cultivate the way. The master said, the way is awakened through the mind. It does not mean that the sitting posture is paramount. The full lotus, the half lotus, is it permissible to sit in lotus posture while listening to teachings? So many people nowadays, well, on one hand it is also needed, we cannot completely dismiss it, but if every day one only looks at the sitting posture and fixates on external forms, becoming rigidly attached in this way is likely unreasonable. The sutras have stated this. The Sixth Patriarch said that the sutra says, if one says that the Tathagata sits or lies down, they are walking a wrong path. Why is this? Because the so-called coming and going do not exist. Neither do arising and ceasing exist. This is the Tathagata's pure dhyana. What is dhyana? It is being without coming and going, without arising and ceasing. This is pure dhyana, and all phenomena are entirely empty and still. This is pure sitting. Therefore, as for dhyana and sitting, regarding sitting in dhyana or dhyana sitting, all phenomena being without arising and ceasing is called dhyana. All phenomena being inherently empty and still is sitting. Apart from this, in the ultimate sense, there is nothing to be realized. Upon the path of practice, there is nothing to be realized. How could there still be a posture of sitting? In the ultimate sense, what is there? There is nothing. The Sixth Patriarch said, a sutra says, however, this specific sutra has never been identified. Some great masters in the Han region say it is stated in the Diamond Sutra, but the Diamond Sutra does not contain the exact phrase, if one says that the Tathagata sits or lies down, they are walking a wrong path. It only says if one sees me in forms, if one seeks me in sounds, they walk a wrong path and cannot see the Tathagata. This phrase does exist there. These two phrases are actually quite similar in meaning. The Buddha Pitaka Sutra also says, if one sees the Buddha through his physical form, one is far from the Buddha. If one views the Buddha through physical forms and appearances, this person has already distanced themselves from the Buddha. In our conventional reality, are there sitting and lying down? Certainly there are. When we practice sitting meditation, we sit in the 7-point posture of Vairochana. This is also found in the biographies of the Buddha. It is also present in our later meditation practices. In related meditation teachings, it is also said because at that time many Buddhas, primarily Shakyamuni Buddha, through the 7-point sitting posture of Vairochana, attained realization. I saw it mentioned in a treatise the other day. It said that because of this auspicious connection, I think it was omniscient Jigme Lingpa or someone else, said that due to this auspicious connection, when we later practitioners sit in the 7-point posture of Vairochana, this posture itself becomes a particularly supreme auspicious connection for our realization. Therefore, it is highly necessary to use this posture to attain awakening. This sitting posture is indeed necessary. As for the lying posture, such as the lion posture, when the Buddha entered parinirvana, he manifested passing away in the auspicious lying posture. It is also a state of samadhi. Even when we sleep at night, sleeping in this lion posture can bring about wholesome dreams, sever unwholesome thoughts, and so forth. It has these kinds of merits as well. In reality, the sitting and lying postures are not denied. Therefore, when the sutras say they walk a wrong path, it is actually spoken from the perspective of the ultimate truth. Whether it is meditation in a lying posture or meditation in a sitting posture, in reality, within the ultimate truth, nothing whatsoever can be attained. Since nothing can be attained, not only are these physical actions, but all conventional phenomena are false and illusory. One could say it like this: the Sixth Patriarch often used the most ultimate perspective to leave his audience utterly speechless. So this makes perfect sense. During our own debates, if we really cannot win and we have absolutely no way out, we start wielding the club of ultimate truth to strike the opponent's intellectual head. Then the other person has no way to give you any other answer. This is also a great method, right? This relates to the situation at the time. Xue Jian knew the Sixth Patriarch would not go to the Imperial Palace, so he stayed there and used this opportunity to seek the way. Actually, seeking the way is a process. If someone asks a very sharp and profound question, the wisdom of a true master can flow forth with the most precious truths, just like pure gold. This is also a fact. If the questioner asks concisely and poses a very precise question, at that time he was asking about meditation. The following text shows that because he knew the Sixth Patriarch would not go to the royal palace, he sought some teachings on behalf of the emperor and the court. He was quite smart. He did not leave empty-handed. He didn't just say, if you won't go, you won't go. Just give me a meal and I'll leave. He did not do that. He still came to seek guidance from the master. The whole purpose of inviting the master was to seek the Dharma. It was not because the Sixth Patriarch's physical body was beautiful to look at, or that Emperor Zhongzong just wanted to look at his physical body. Empress Zetian was also quite elderly at the time. She did not just want to see what the master looked like. It wasn't like that. The Dharma within his mind stream was what truly mattered. Actually, when following a master, seeking wisdom is very important. Nowadays, many people do not know how to seek the master's compassion and wisdom. They just seek to look at the master or listen to the master. Do you know how to sing pop songs? Our master is very compassionate and wonderful. He can sing many, many pop songs. Some people actually say this. For that, you really don't need a spiritual master. You can go to a music conservatory or somewhere else. Just look on the internet. There are plenty of people who can sing pop songs. I have actually met someone like this. Xue Jian said, "When your disciple returns to the capital, their majesties will certainly ask me. I pray that the master will compassionately instruct me on the essential teachings, so I may present them to the two palaces and the students of the way in the capital. It is like a single lamp lighting hundreds and thousands of lamps. All the darkness is illuminated, and the light is endless." He raised this question here. Xue Jian was very clever. Since you are not going, whether you are truly ill or just pretending to be ill, sometimes we also need to attend certain events, and when we don't really want to go, we say, I am sick, I am not feeling well. Then he essentially said, if you are truly unwell, then I will still return to the capital. In that case, my lords, namely the Emperor and Zetian, will certainly ask me about the principles of meditation. I hope you, out of compassion, Master, can give some teachings. Give me some essential instructions that I can take back with me. Whether it's about the Zen tradition or essential instructions that point directly to the nature of the mind, could you compassionately give them to me? When I go back, since you are unable to come, they will definitely ask. I can then present them to the two palaces, the Emperor and the Empress Dowager, and to all the practitioners of the way in the capital. If I transmit it to them, then you transmit it to me today, and I transmit it to them. They will pass it from 1 to 10, and 10 to 100. It is like one lamp lighting 100 lamps, and 100 lamps lighting 1,000 lamps. In this way, passing the lamp from one to another, the light will be endlessly illuminating. Gradually, the light will, from a worldly perspective, continue to be passed down. From now on, the lamp of the future Dharma teachings will be continuously passed down. In terms of our current scope, actually, this lamp of luminous wisdom can also be transmitted in all directions. In this regard, the metaphor is indeed very well spoken. When we transmit the Buddha Dharma, we still need this kind of spirit. For example, if a person previously had no lamp, and you go to a certain master to receive the lamp of wisdom, the master's lamp is just like when we hold a lamp offering Dharma assembly. As the lamps are passed, they spread gradually. The scope keeps expanding. When you take such a bright lamp to a particularly dark place, you can also pass this lamp to many, many people. Why was Nalanda University in India back then actually a place where the lamps of wisdom gathered like clouds? Later, people from all directions and various countries went there to study. Even if it was just 1 or 2 people, when they returned to their own countries, they spread the bright lamp of propagating the Dharma all over the 10 directions. Therefore, those of us sitting here should also have this kind of spirit and aspiration. Everyone's aspiration, although you might be very small and weak right now, yet later, in the days to come, for your own country, your own city, your own people, and the sentient beings you have a karmic connection with, because the ideals of Buddhism are vast and boundless. They do not distinguish any boundaries. As long as they are living beings, they can be benefited by the Buddha Dharma. Just as one lamp lights many lamps, the countless numbers of them are endless. One lamp can light many, many lamps. Ultimately, when the bright lamps are gathered together, this radiance illuminates an entire world. One matures, and thereby matures many. The countless numbers of them are endless. One, for instance, an emanated body of the Buddha, can bring to maturity many, many bodhisattvas. One bodhisattva can then emanate countless bodhisattvas, or sentient beings with karmic connections, non-bodhisattvas, and so on. After this, the capacity and scope of liberation continuously expand. And ultimately, it is indeed true. I sometimes think, for example, about His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche. Of course, he is an emanation of a bodhisattva. His capabilities cannot be compared with those of many others. The power of him alone, an elderly master, the bright lamp of wisdom within his mind stream, has actually been transmitted to many future generations of ours, including both the Tibetan areas and the Han region and many other places. This oral transmission of the Buddha Dharma will certainly, at the very least, be passed down continuously for hundreds of years. And this scope should be very vast, so everyone should realize that actually the ancients, whether they were people in the imperial palace or in other places, the way they asked questions was extremely meaningful. He said, if you today transmit the lamp of Zen to me, then I can pass it down. Indeed, he also had this confidence. It is possible that Emperor Zhongzong at the time, when dispatching someone, would not have sent someone who knew nothing or held wrong views about Buddhism. He didn't send a person like that. Although his background and his wisdom were not introduced in detail, from the way he asked questions, one can also see it. When a person asks questions and answers questions, you can also discern the depth of this person's wisdom. The Master said, the way has no light or darkness. Light and darkness represent the meaning of alternation. Endlessly illuminating also has an end, for these terms are established in dependence on each other. Therefore, the Vimalakirti Sutra says, the Dharma has no compare because it is without dependence. His reply at the time was like this: because the attendant had just said, transmit the Zen Dharma to me, and then I can pass it down, endlessly illuminating. But the Sixth Patriarch once again spoke from the standpoint of the ultimate truth. The way, our path of practice, the highest state of Zen, has no darkness and light. If there is darkness and light, this is the meaning of alternation, that is, a meaning of change. They are mutually dependent and rely on each other. It is not the most ultimate meaning. Then what about endlessly illuminating? It is also subject to ending. You just said, all the darkness is illuminated and the light is endless. Endlessly illuminating is subject to an end. Why? Because it is also mutually dependent. Phenomena that are mutually dependent are not ultimate. This point is also stated in the Vimalakirti Sutra. The quote from the Vimalakirti Sutra used here can also be found in the original text. The Dharma has no conceptualization because it is free from consciousness. The Dharma has no compare because it is without dependence. This is in the Vimalakirti Sutra. It means that the Dharma inherently has no conceptualization from the perspective of the perceiving subject, because all phenomena are fundamentally free from all consciousness. From the perspective of the perceived object, all phenomena, whether light or darkness, have no contrast, such as light and darkness. Because they are mutually dependent, these are all relative and dependent, but in the ultimate sense, there is no mutual dependence. There is no duality, there is no conceptual thought, there are no words, no objects, none of these exist, so there is no way. Xue Jian then asked another question. He was also very smart. Xue Jian said, light is a metaphor for wisdom, and darkness is a metaphor for afflictions. If practitioners of the way do not use wisdom to illuminate and destroy afflictions, how can they escape the beginningless cycle of birth and death? He said, Master, you cannot say this. There must be light and darkness. From the perspective of our practice, light corresponds to wisdom and darkness corresponds to afflictions. If we do not use the light of wisdom to illuminate and shatter the darkness of afflictions, then in that case sentient beings are so pitiful. They have been drowning in cyclic existence since beginningless time, forever drowning in darkness. When will they be able to escape? There would be no way to attain liberation. There must be wisdom, right? This light of wisdom, great master, is it because you have been in the mountain forests without lamps all this time that you do not really acknowledge light? So if the darkness of afflictions is not removed, we sentient beings will never be able to attain liberation. Of course, this is also a question from the perspective of conventional truth. The master said, afflictions are body, there is no duality and no difference. If one uses wisdom to illuminate and destroy afflictions, this is the view of the two vehicles, the capacity of the sheep and deer carts. For those of supreme wisdom and great capacity, it is not like this at all. Then the Sixth Patriarch answered him, saying, you just said that afflictions are destroyed by relying on the bright lamp of wisdom. This statement is incorrect. Afflictions themselves are body. There are not two different things. The fundamental nature of afflictions is body. If you use wisdom to illuminate and destroy afflictions, treating afflictions as something that exists, using the wisdom of selflessness of persons to illuminate and destroy afflictions, and ultimately severing the self of persons, this way of speaking is actually the view of the Shravakayana, the view of the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas. It is the capacity of the sheep cart and the deer cart. In the Lotus Sutra we have discussed the metaphor, haven't we? For example, the children inside the burning house were playing, and a wise person used a sheep cart to entice them, so they came out. He used a deer cart to entice them and got them to come out. And then there was the white ox cart. By coming to this, they are respectively metaphorical. For example, the sheep cart. A sheep does not care about others. When it encounters danger, it just runs away by itself. This is the metaphor for the Shravakas. The deer cart. A deer pays a little attention to what is beside it. This is the metaphor for the Pratyeka Buddhas. Generally the white ox, the finest ox, just like what we see in the show Animal Planet or similar programs. Some oxen care very deeply about their herd. In order to protect their herd, they would even sacrifice their own lives. This is the Bodhisattva vehicle. Therefore, the metaphor here means that separating afflictions and wisdom into two is the capacity of the Shravakayana. However, for the capacity of supreme wisdom in the Mahayana, the highest state of the Buddha, the state of our Zen tradition, it is not like this at all. It is entirely the white ox cart, to use this metaphor. Moreover, afflictions are bodhi. In the Buddhist sutras, there is one called the Sutra of the Ocean Treasury of Buddha Nature, the Wisdom of Liberation, and the Smashing of Mind Marks. There is such a sutra in the Han region. But this name is particularly long, the Sutra of the Ocean Treasury of Buddha Nature, the Wisdom of Liberation, and the Smashing of Mind Marks. There is such a scripture, the title is very long. The Buddha is not apart from sentient beings. Sentient beings are not apart from the Buddha. Therefore, water is not apart from waves. Waves are not apart from water. It has this metaphor which means that actually, speaking from the definitive meaning, the Buddha is sentient beings, and sentient beings are the Buddha. The waves of water are water, and water is the waves. These two are non-dual and undifferentiated. It is merely that when blown by the wind of ignorance and afflictions, a different appearance is stirred up. In reality, their fundamental nature has no difference. Therefore, we sentient beings are inherently Buddhas. Afflictions are inherently Buddha. The reason is just like this. Thus, the Sixth Patriarch at that time used this way to explain it to him. After this, when he returned to the imperial palace, he had enough to present to the emperor. He knew, oh, so afflictions are bodhi. He himself could almost start serving as the imperial preceptor. Next, he began to explain some Mahayana views. Xue Jian said, "What is the Mahayana view?" The following section primarily explains the Mahayana view. The master said, light and ignorance are seen as two by ordinary people. The wise comprehend that their nature is non-dual. The non-dual nature is the true nature. The true nature in ordinary foolish people, it is not reduced. In sages, it is not increased. Dwelling in afflictions, it is not disturbed. Abiding in meditative absorption, it is not still. It is neither severed nor permanent, neither coming nor going, not in the middle nor inside or outside. It is neither arising nor ceasing. Its nature and characteristics are suchness. It eternally abides without changing. This is called the way. Here he explains what the Mahayana view is. The Mahayana view is that light and ignorance, afflictions and wisdom appear as two distinct entities to ordinary people. They are seen as two separate phenomena, like black and white ropes twisted together. Both are perceived as existing. However, true Mahayana sages comprehend that light and ignorance, afflictions and wisdom, their nature is non-dual. The non-dual nature is actually the true nature of all phenomena. When this true nature is present in the state of ordinary beings, it is actually not reduced. We might think that ordinary people lack wisdom, and sages have gained a great deal of wisdom. According to the Shravakayana perspective, when we were ordinary beings in the past, we had no wisdom. It is only later, upon becoming a sage, that this wisdom appears and arises. But in reality, this is not the case. This non-dual view, even for an ordinary being, exists without any reduction. And for a sage, a bodhisattva of the 10th bhumi, there is no increase in it either. Dwelling in afflictions, it is not disturbed. Dwelling amidst afflictions, such as attachment and aversion, the mind has never been confused or disturbed. Even when abiding in the most tranquil samadhi, it has never truly been still. Those of us who have received tantric teachings all know this. For example, the great laughter of the 8 Harukas. In these contexts, the mind of a hell being and the wisdom of Samantabhadra Tathagata have no difference. The mindset of committing the 5 heinous crimes and the mindset of making offerings to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions are fundamentally non-dual and undifferentiated. There are many such examples. Hell and heaven are the same. Buddhas and sentient beings are the same. There are many such expressions in tantric teachings. They might be difficult for us to explain conventionally, but within the Zen tradition it is perfectly understandable. All wisdom and ignorance, these two for ordinary beings exist in a state of neither increasing nor decreasing. For sages too, they exist in a state of neither decreasing nor increasing. There is no difference between the two. In terms of their fundamental nature, Samantabhadra Tathagata is no different from me. Manjushri Bodhisattva is no different from any of us. One of us might say, I can't memorize this. I'm suffering so much. As soon as I memorize it, I forget it. I memorize it and then forget it. However, compared to the wisdom of Manjushri Bodhisattva, it is exactly the same. Such a fundamental nature is neither severed nor permanent, neither coming nor going, not in the middle, nor inside or outside. It is neither arising nor ceasing. Its nature and characteristics are suchness. Neither the true nature nor the appearances exist inherently. In our perception, it is like hairs seen by someone with an eye disease. In reality, these two do not exist. In conventional truth, we can analyze it this way, but in reality, it eternally abides without changing. It is always the same, because if we truly recognize it as neither increasing nor decreasing, the most profound meaning of Buddhism, although it is emptiness, or a relationship between emptiness and luminous wisdom, is incredibly wondrous. This is called the true way. Here indeed the Sixth Patriarch has explained the most definitive meaning of Mahayana Buddhism: neither increasing nor decreasing, neither arising nor ceasing, neither permanent nor severed, neither coming nor going. This profound principle, when we discussed the beginning of the root stanzas of the Middle Way, we encountered similar concepts. But here, it is explained through the practice methods of the Zen tradition. When we teach tantric teachings, we explain it through the practice methods of Tantra. In reality, they are different paths leading to the same destination. From the most ultimate perspective, it can be said that all rivers flow into the vast ocean. There is no difference. Xue Jian said, "Master, you speak of neither arising nor ceasing. How is this different from the non-Buddhists?" "Master, you just spoke of neither arising nor ceasing. Non-Buddhists also speak of a neither arising nor ceasing. Are they the same?" He asked a rather good question. The Sixth Patriarch was tired, and his health was not good. He was being asked too many questions. Maybe he was starting to lose his temper. Who knows? Too many questions. First asking what the Mahayana is, then asking how he should report back, then asking about samadhi. He seemed to have asked 5 or 6 questions. Quite a lot of questions. But because the Sixth Patriarch didn't have to go, he didn't want to go to the Emperor. While staying in a secluded place, he still had many profound states to share. So outwardly, he did not reject him, but attentively answered them one by one. The Master said, "The neither arising nor ceasing, spoken of by non-Buddhists, takes ceasing to stop arising, and uses arising to reveal ceasing. Their ceasing is like non-ceasing, and their arising is called non-arising. My neither arising nor ceasing is originally without arising, and now it also does not cease, therefore it is different from the non-Buddhists." He says here, the neither arising nor ceasing, spoken of by non-Buddhists, actually uses ceasing to bring an end to arising. Generally speaking, non-Buddhists believe that ceasing and arising have some sort of inherent, substantial existence. The Lankavatara Sutra specifically discusses this, differentiating it from the non-Buddhist concepts of permanence and severance, arising and ceasing. Non-Buddhists actually believe that the substantial nature of phenomena exists. They speak from the perspective of the arising and ceasing of an inherently existing entity. Whether it is their concept of permanence or arising or ceasing, they completely acknowledge that the fundamental nature of phenomena always exists. If the fundamental nature of a phenomenon truly exists, then arising and ceasing are very difficult to establish. He explains here that it is different from the non-Buddhists, neither arising nor ceasing. Why? For non-Buddhists, their so-called ceasing is acknowledged as the termination of arising. For example, when a thing finally dies, its arising no longer continues. That is what they call ceasing. Uses arising to reveal ceasing. It uses ceasing to stop arising, and uses arising because this phenomenon has arising. It indicates that it will manifest a process of ceasing. Therefore, to reveal ceasing, it is established in dependence upon arising. Because it has arising, it means it has not yet ceased. Its ceasing still exists as a potential. This is their reasoning. So there is ceasing and also non-ceasing. When it manifests as existing, it is called non-ceasing. Then this ceasing, this phenomenon of ceasing in Madhyamaka, does the phenomenon of ceasing exist or not? The Gelugpa school and many others debate this in Entering the Middle Way. So here, the phenomenon of ceasing and non-ceasing, they consider these two to have substantial existence. And between so-called arising and non-arising, there is also substantial existence. For example, this flower, when it is arising, it is considered not to be ceasing. It is currently arising, it is not non-arising. Once it has not arisen, at that time it is considered non-arising. Whether it is non-arising and non-ceasing or arising and ceasing, the key is that they exist on a substantial level. its substantial entity is always acknowledged. In this process of acknowledgement, just like the Shravakayana also speaks of arising, ceasing, and abiding, they also acknowledge it. When we discuss the root stanzas of the Middle Way, there is the realistic school's definition of phenomena. When speaking of conditioned phenomena, phenomena that possess arising, ceasing, and abiding are called conditioned phenomena, right? That should be it. Is that correct? Yes, it is. So let's explain it this way. It seems many texts do not explain this in detail, but in terms of explaining it, isn't it better to put it this way? My neither arising nor ceasing is originally without arising. The neither arising nor ceasing we speak of, in the ultimate truth, all manifested phenomena have never truly arisen. It is not that a phenomenon has arisen, and then when it has ceased, we call it neither arising nor ceasing. It is not like that. The phenomenon itself, when examined through time, when examined through its fundamental nature, when examined with vast wisdom, appears as if it has arisen, but it has never truly arisen. So there is still a very big difference. Whereas the non-Buddhists believe a thing arises and then ceases, they analyze it from this perspective. Therefore, originally, without arising, and now it also does not cease. Therefore, it is different from the non-Buddhists. If you wish to know the essential teachings, simply do not ponder any good or evil. If you wish to understand the true essential teachings of the Zen tradition, all good, all evil, do not ponder them, do not think about them. You will naturally enter the pure essence of mind, clear and constantly still, its wondrous functions as numerous as the sands of the Ganges. When you do not engage in conceptual thinking, you naturally enter the pure, luminous, and empty essence of mind, where the two are non-dual. It will possess, on one hand, clarity, and on the other, emptiness. Also, its wondrous functions are unceasing, boundless, and infinite. It has these characteristics. As I explain it, it seems very much like in our tantric teachings, where we often say, for example, the fundamental nature is emptiness, constantly still. Its inherent nature is luminous, the Sambhogakaya, and its manifestation is unceasing, all-pervasive great compassion, wondrously functioning in the world as various nirmanakayas that can manifest before us. Clear refers to the aspect of luminosity. Constantly still refers to the aspect of emptiness. Wondrous functions refers to its wondrous power used in great compassion or used to liberate sentient beings, as numerous as the sands of the Ganges, without interruption in the world. It can be explained in this way, I suppose. This is the most ultimate state of mind. If you wish to understand the essential teachings, it means that in the ultimate truth, in the absolute sense, do not ponder either good or evil. Just follow the pith instructions of the Zen tradition to enter the fundamental nature of the mind. At this time you will know that luminosity and emptiness are non-dual and undifferentiated, and in conventional reality it manifests to liberate sentient beings as numerous as the sands of the Ganges, a display of benefit and enlightened activity. This is what it means. Receiving the master's instruction, Xue Jian was suddenly and greatly awakened. He bowed, took his leave, and returned to the palace, where he presented a memorial reporting the master's words. After receiving the Sixth Patriarch's instruction, Xue Jian was suddenly and greatly awakened, achieving profound enlightenment. It seems he had already attained realization. Then, filled with joy and reverence, he took his leave. He returned to the imperial palace and presented a memorial, submitting all the teachings he had received from the Sixth Patriarch to the relevant parties. He didn't just come for himself, he presented them to the emperor and to those in the capital who had the karmic connection. Later, the emperor must have received true benefit. On the 3rd day of the 9th month of that year. Earlier, it was the 15th day of the 1st month. Now, 9 months had passed. The emperor began to understand. Perhaps he had been practicing in retreat for 9 months. On the 3rd day of the 9th month of that year, an edict of praise was issued to the master, saying the master declined on the grounds of old age and illness, cultivating the Dharma on our behalf. He is a field of merit for the nation. Later, he received an edict of praise from the emperor, an imperial decree. I don't know who delivered it. It said, "Sixth Patriarch, you are elderly and in poor health, so you did not come to the imperial palace. However, by dwelling in the mountain forests, you are actually diligently practicing the way and making aspirations for us, for the nation, and for me, the emperor. You have bestowed immense blessings, chanting sutras every day. This is the field of merit for our nation." Actually, a true great master, seen from this perspective, the emperor still acknowledged him as the imperial preceptor. The master is like Vimalakirti, who used illness as a pretext in Vaishali to propagate the Mahayana, transmit the minds of the Buddhas, and discuss the non-dual Dharma. Through your blessings, our nation enjoys peace and prosperity, favorable weather, and everything is immersed in auspiciousness. We are profoundly grateful. So, Great Master, you are equivalent to Vimalakirti. Jingming refers to Vimalakirti, the lay practitioner Vimalakirti. He also resided in the city of Vaishali under the pretext of illness, extensively propagating the Mahayana teachings, transmitting the Buddha's mind Dharma, and frequently discussing the non-dual Dharma. So your current role, of course, the Sixth Patriarch was a monastic, but metaphorically speaking of his enlightened activities, is very similar to that of the lay practitioner Vimalakirti. He too was unwell at the time, but prayed for the entire nation and propagated the Buddha Dharma. You are also residing there, bestowing blessings upon our entire nation. Xue Jian has transmitted the Master's instruction on the Tathagata's knowledge and vision. Through our accumulated merit and residual blessings, and having planted wholesome roots in past lives, we have encountered the Master's appearance in the world and suddenly awakened to the Supreme Vehicle, the Tathagata's knowledge and vision pointing directly to the mind's nature that you transmitted to Xue Jian, the exceptionally profound Mahayana views, and the most ultimate essential teachings of the Zen tradition. These have already allowed us and relevant individuals, due to the merit of practicing wholesome deeds in past lives. A family that accumulates goodness will surely have abundant blessings, because we accumulated the merit of goodness and planted wholesome roots in past lives due to various causes and conditions. We have encountered your teachings, encountered your appearance in the world. Therefore, the emperor at that time was indeed exceedingly reverent toward the Zen master. From these words we can also see this. The emperor said he had already suddenly awakened to the supreme vehicle. You see, one doesn't necessarily have to go to the master in person. Through this kind of transmission, he had already suddenly awakened to the supreme vehicle. We are deeply grateful for the master's kindness and revere you endlessly. We present to you a Monyo Kasaya and a crystal alms bowl. He was extremely grateful to the benevolent master. You see, many people, the 8th Karmapa, also said, even if one has not met the master in person, if one truly receives certain teachings of the master, then one can also regard him as one's own root guru, because when you receive the grace of the Dharma, you can do this. So you see, the emperor at that time had not met him in person, but because his Dharma teachings were transmitted to him through his palace attendant, he indeed had already suddenly awakened to the supreme vehicle. He was exceptionally grateful to the master. He revered him endlessly, with boundless gratitude, and presented him with a Monyo Kasaya. It is said that a Monyo Kasaya was a Kasaya imported from Goryeo, Korea, like Indian cloth, a Kasaya imported from Korea, and a crystal alms bowl. Was this domestically produced in China? Probably. It doesn't say it was like the Monyo Kasaya, so this was likely domestically produced. A crystal alms bowl. We decree that the prefect of Shaozhou renovate the temple buildings, and we bestow upon the master's former residence the name Gui'en Temple. He also commanded the prefect of Shaozhou, where the master was residing at the time, the provincial governor, the official, requesting that the temple where the 6th Patriarch was currently staying be restored and renovated, allocating hundreds of thousands, millions, or even hundreds of millions to immediately renovate it. Furthermore, his former residence over in Xinzhou, there was a temple he used to be at. From that time on, this temple was bestowed the name Guan Temple, Temple of National Grace. Because he had shown immense grace to the nation, the temple where he previously resided had shown immense grace to the entire nation. That should be the reason. I wonder which temple Guan Temple is today. Is it still called Guan Temple? What is that temple in Xinzhou called? You can look it up later, all right? From this, there are many principles we can reflect upon. One is the relationship at that time between the emperor and the imperial preceptor, showing their high regard for Mahayana Buddhism. Another is the treatment the Zen tradition received throughout the nation at that time, including the emperor himself. If he had already suddenly awakened to the supreme vehicle, if the emperor was a Zen practitioner, then those below him, because generally speaking, whether in ancient times or today, however the drum is beaten above, that's how they will dance below. Generally, many of us look at how those above speak, what their attitude is, and those below will follow suit. Therefore, we can also see the mindset of the ancients at that time toward the Zen tradition or Buddhism and the benefit they received from it. Because of this, it has continued uninterrupted until today. This is also the reason. All right, we will stop here for today.
Bandara